So the first question that we're starting with is, when you're starting a small business, you should be thinking about, well, what is it that I'm starting? Is it something separate? Is it what we call a legal entity? And we want you to walk away from here understanding what is a business entity and why is it important to start one and to know that you're starting one. So I'm sure you've seen all of these things up on the screen. You encounter them in your daily life because you're bombarded with advertisements from different business entities. There's the corporation, which is probably the most prevalent, but there's all these other ones: sole proprietorships, LLCs, nonprofits, cooperatives, partnerships. And it can be bewildering to try and understand, if you're trying to start a business, which one of these is appropriate for you to start. So let's step back and think about, why do you form entities in the first place? Well, you don't actually have to form a business entity. You could actually go out and start selling food, making things, and doing business without having filed any paperwork with the state of California to form something. And if you did that, you would be called a sole proprietor. And basically, there's nothing separating your business from your personal assets. It's just you. And that's certainly what some people do, but there's risks to doing that. And one of the main risks is that there's nothing protecting you personally if there's something that goes wrong with your business and you get sued. There's nothing that will limit your liability and protect your personal assets. So that's called limited liability. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to turn this thing a little bit. Yeah. But there's two other reasons. People do it because of financial reasons. They want to raise money, and they also do it for tax reasons. So the first one, there's your house. If you're a sole proprietor and you are operating a food business and somebody gets sick and they sue you and they're successful, then they can come after all your personal assets, including your house. So one way to avoid that problem is to form a limited liability entity, and that creates what you call a shield, a liability shield, around your personal assets. And so if something goes wrong and you do get sued, the person who prevails in this lawsuit can only go after you to the extent of what you invested in your business. And that's called limited liability. So they can go after the business. And this is assuming that you're actually operating the business properly and following what are called the necessary formalities to separating your personal assets and your personal life from the business's life, and treating the business as a separate person. Another reason why people do this is to raise money. So for example, people form business entities, for-profits usually, to facilitate getting loans from banks. They also do it to facilitate getting investments or equity from friends and family, or from, depending on who you're reaching out to, from venture capitalists, from the public markets. Nonprofit corporations also do it because it allows them to get grants and donations. And finally, there's tax considerations with forming a legal entity. Nonprofits don't, tax-exempt nonprofits don't pay income tax on money they receive for charitable purposes. And for-profits have a variety of ways in which they can choose how they're going to be taxed. So for example, corporations are taxed at the entity level because they're considered a separate taxable person, versus other types of organizations that are LLCs and partnerships have what we call pass-through taxation. And then there's another type of organization called a cooperative, which is a mix, has a mixed type of taxation. Don't worry if this just seems to be really brief and we're passing over things very quickly. We go into more depth in the manual when we talk about taxes and liability. But the purpose here is just so you understand why people start entities and that there are differences across entities. So to step back from those questions, when you're trying to consider whether you're going to choose a business entity and which one you're going to choose, you should think about these questions that we just raised. Are you going to be doing an activity that could potentially subject you to personal liability? And in that case, you might want to start a limited liability entity. You also want to think about who's going to own it. Are you going to own it by yourself? Are there a group of partners that you're working with? Do you want to own it cooperatively? Is it going to be something that's dedicated to the public because it's a nonprofit? In which case, nobody actually owns it. It's something that's in the public trust. How is it going to be managed? Are you going to have volunteers working at it? And are you really concerned that taxes are paid separately by the business itself? Or do you not mind it all being paid in your own individual personal income taxes? So these are complicated questions, and it takes a lot of thinking and planning. And one helpful way to kind of address these questions is to actually form a business plan, where you can decide questions about who's your market, who are the competitors out there, what's your business model, and those questions that you answer in your business planning process can help you arrive at what might be the right legal entity to choose for your project. And after the legal presentation part is over and after lunch, we will have a business planning session to get you acquainted with what are the basics around business planning. So to sum up, the first portion of this workshop is really around legal entities. And there's a lot out there, and there are even new ones called the Benefit Corporation and Flexible Purpose Corporation. And we have resources available to you in the form of our follow-up clinics, as well as the legal cafes that Ricardo mentioned, where we can really sit down with you and talk you through what different entities are and why they might be beneficial to you.